My husband handed me my morning coffee with that same loving smile he'd perfected over 8 years of marriage. I took one sip, and in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered like glass. The bitter, chemical taste on my tongue wasn't just bad coffee. It was poison. And the man I loved most in the world was the one holding the cup. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a licensed pharmacist at Morrison's Community Pharmacy in Portland, Oregon, a small independent operation that's been serving our neighborhood for 3 generations. My parents owned it before me, and I took over after they passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. It was supposed to be my legacy, my safe harbor. I never imagined it would become the key to exposing a monster. Thomas Morgan, my husband, is, or was, a respected cardiologist at St. Vincent Medical Center. Tall, distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair at the temples, he had that doctor charisma that made patients trust him instantly. When we met at a medical conference 9 years ago, I was a newly licensed pharmacist, and he was the keynote speaker discussing innovative cardiac treatments. He sought me out at the reception afterward, said he was captivated by my questions during the Q&A session. "You have a brilliant mind," he'd said, his blue eyes intense and focused entirely on me. And the most genuine smile I've ever seen. I fell hard and fast. Within 6 months, we were engaged. Within a year, married in a beautiful ceremony at the Japanese gardens, surrounded by cherry blossoms and the people we loved. My parents adored him. My friends envied me. I thought I'd won the lottery of life, a successful career, a gorgeous husband, financial security, and what I believed was a love story for the ages. For 8 years, our life together seemed perfect. Thomas left for the hospital early, usually around 6:30 in the morning, and I opened the pharmacy at 9. We had a routine that felt sacred, intimate. Every single morning, without fail, Thomas would wake me at 6 with a cup of coffee, already prepared exactly how I liked it, 2 creams, 1 sugar, in my favorite ceramic mug with the little purple flowers my mother had given me. "Good morning, beautiful," he'd whisper, setting the mug on my nightstand and kissing my forehead. "I made your coffee." I'd wrap my hands around the warm cup, breathing in the rich aroma, and feel so loved, so cherished. This small gesture seemed to encapsulate everything good about our marriage. While other couples grew distant or stopped making effort, my Thomas still brought me coffee in bed after 8 years. I bragged about it to my friends, posted about it on social media. I was that insufferable wife who thought she had it all figured out. But I didn't. I was living with a predator, and I didn't even know I was prey. The first signs were so subtle I dismissed them as stress or aging. About 18 months ago, I started feeling perpetually exhausted. No matter how much I slept, I'd wake up feeling drugged, my thoughts foggy and slow. I'd stand at the pharmacy counter, staring at a prescription, and the words would swim before my eyes. Simple calculations took me twice as long as they should have. "Maybe you need to cut back your hours," Thomas suggested one evening as I rubbed my temples, fighting off another headache. "You're working yourself too hard, Rachel. Pharmacy is successful enough. You don't need to be there every day." "I'm fine," I'd insisted. "Just a little tired." But I wasn't fine. The fatigue got worse. Then came the memory lapses. I'd forget conversations I'd had just hours before. I'd misplace my keys, my phone, my purse. Once, I completely forgot about a dinner reservation Thomas had made, leaving him waiting at the restaurant for an hour. "Rachel, I'm worried about you," he said that night, his face the picture of concern. "This isn't like you. Maybe you should see someone. A neurologist or perhaps a psychiatrist. Memory issues at your age could indicate early onset dementia, or it might be anxiety manifesting in cognitive symptoms." The word dementia terrified me. My grandmother had suffered from Alzheimer's, and the thought of following that path made my blood run cold. When Thomas gently suggested I see Dr. Patricia Winters, a psychiatrist at his hospital, I agreed immediately. Dr. Winters was kind, professional, thorough. Through 3 sessions, she diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder and prescribed anti-anxiety medication. Thomas, ever the devoted husband, picked up my prescriptions himself from a different pharmacy, said it would be easier than me having to fill my own medications at work. "I'll make sure you take them every day," he promised. "I know you, Rachel. You'll forget or convince yourself you don't need them. I'm going to take care of you." And he did. Every morning with my coffee, he'd hand me my pills. Every evening before bed, another dose. I took them faithfully, trusting him completely. After all, he was a doctor. He loved me. He knew what was best. Except the medications made everything worse. The fog in my brain thickened. The fatigue became debilitating. I started having dizzy spells at work, moments where the room would tilt and spin. My assistant manager, Jennifer Chen, a sharp 26-year-old who'd been with the pharmacy since college, started giving me worried looks. "Rachel, maybe you should go home," she'd say, studying me when I swayed. "You don't look good." "I'm fine," I'd repeat like a mantra. Just adjusting to the new medication. But I wasn't adjusting. I was getting worse, and some dark primal part of my brain was starting to whisper that something was very, very wrong. Then came that Tuesday morning in October. The morning that changed everything. Thomas brought me my coffee as usual. The ceramic mug, the familiar ritual, the kiss on my forehead. But when I raised the cup to my lips and took that first sip, something was different. Taste was wrong, not just bad, but chemically wrong. There was a bitter, metallic undertone that didn't belong, a slight grittiness on my tongue that made every instinct in my body scream danger. I've been a pharmacist for 12 years. I know medications. I know how they taste, how they dissolve, how they interact with liquids. And I knew with absolute certainty that there was something in my coffee that shouldn't be there. My heart began to pound. I forced myself to swallow that sip, then immediately said, "Oh, I think I left my phone in the bathroom." "Be right back." Thomas smiled. "Don't let your coffee get cold." I walked calmly to the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned over the sink, spitting out every trace of liquid I could. My hands were shaking violently as I rinsed my mouth again and again with water. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, pale, thin, dark circles under my eyes, looking 10 years older than I should. When had I started looking like this? I crept back to the bedroom and watched through a crack in the door. Thomas was getting dressed, humming softly to himself. He glanced at my coffee mug on the nightstand, still mostly full, and I saw something flicker across his face. Annoyance? Frustration? It was there and gone so quickly I almost thought I'd imagined it. After he left for work, I took that coffee mug and sealed it in a Ziploc bag. Then I called in sick to the pharmacy for the first time in 2 years and drove straight to a private lab across town, one where no one knew me. "I need this analyzed," I told the technician, a young guy with thick glasses and a curious expression. "I need to know exactly what's in it. Every component, every chemical. I'll pay whatever it costs for a rush job." "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked, clearly seeing the panic in my eyes. "If you think you've been poisoned, you should go to the hospital." "Just test it," I said. "Please. And I need the results sent only to my personal email. No one else can know." He nodded slowly. "It'll take about 6 hours for a complete analysis. We'll email you by 4 o'clock. Those 6 hours were the longest of my life. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot, my mind racing through possibilities, through memories, through every moment of the past 18 months. The fog in my brain, the memory lapses, the increasing weakness. What if it wasn't anxiety at all? What if Thomas had been drugging me? But why? Why would my husband poison me? We were happy. We loved each other. He brought me coffee every morning as an act of love, or as an act of murder. The email arrived at 3:47 p.m. I opened it with trembling fingers. Sample analysis results. Caffeine standard concentration for brewed coffee cream/dairy, present sucrose, present alprazolam, 4 mg diazepam, 10 mg zolpidem, 15 mg. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. prazolam, diazepam, salpetem, benzodiazepines, and sedative hypnotics. In massive doses, enough to keep someone in a constant state of sedation, to cloud their judgment, to make them forget, to make them weak and compliant and confused. Thomas wasn't bringing me coffee out of love. He was bringing me poison. Every single morning for how long? Months? A year? 18 months? Pulled up my pharmacy records on my phone, accessing our controlled substance logs. My fingers flew across the screen as I cross-referenced dates and quantities. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. Small discrepancies in our benzodiazepine inventory, always on days when Thomas had stopped by the pharmacy to take me to lunch or to pick up something for a patient. Pills going missing, 10 here, 20 there, never enough to trigger an automatic flag in the system, but over months, adding up to hundreds of missing doses. He'd been stealing from my pharmacy, using my access, my trust, my own medications to drug me. And I'd been so foggy, so confused, I hadn't even noticed the inventory shrinkage. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Jennifer from the pharmacy. "Rachel, I'm so sorry to bother you when you're sick, but we just had an audit notification. The DEA is flagging our controlled substance records for a routine inspection next month. I'm going through everything now to make sure we're ready, and I'm finding some discrepancies in our benzodiazepine counts. Nothing major, but—" "I know," I interrupted, my voice hollow. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone about those discrepancies. Not yet. Give me 48 hours. Rachel, what's going on? Are you okay?" "No," I whispered. "I'm not. But I will be. I promise I'll explain everything soon. Just trust me. Please." She hesitated. "Okay. 48 hours. But Rachel, be careful." I hung up and sat there in my car, shaking. The evidence was clear. Thomas was systematically drugging me with medications stolen from my own pharmacy. But why? What was his endgame? I needed help. Professional help. The kind of help that could navigate this nightmare without getting me killed in the process. I pulled up my phone and started searching. Private investigator, Portland, Oregon. Dozens of results appeared, but one caught my eye. Hayes Investigation Services. The website was simple, professional, with a photo of a stern-looking woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair and sharp hazel eyes. Victoria Hayes, former Portland PD detective, 25 years experience. Specializing in domestic cases, fraud investigation, and surveillance. Discretion guaranteed. Called the number. She answered on the second ring. Hayes Investigations. "My name is Rachel Morgan," I said, my voice breaking. "My husband is poisoning me, and I need to know why before he kills me." There was a pause. Then, in a voice that was both gentle and steel-hard, she said, "Come to my office. Right now. Don't go home. Don't call your husband. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Then let's save your life, Mrs. Morgan." Victoria Hayes's office was in a nondescript building in southeast Portland, sandwiched between a Thai restaurant and a used bookstore. I climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor, my legs feeling like rubber, and knocked on the frosted glass door marked Hayes Investigations. "Come in." Victoria Hayes looked exactly like her photo, but with an added intensity that the camera couldn't capture. She was tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in law enforcement. Her office was small but immaculate, walls covered with commendations and photographs from her police days. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." I did. I told her about Thomas, about our marriage, about the coffee ritual, about the fog and the memory lapses and the medications, about the lab results I'd received just hours ago, about the missing pills from my pharmacy. I showed her everything on my phone, the lab analysis, the inventory discrepancies, even my own medical records from Dr. Winters. Victoria listened without interrupting, taking notes in a leather-bound notebook. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me with those sharp eyes. Mrs. Morgan, Rachel, I'm going to be very direct with you. What you've described is not just spousal abuse. This is attempted murder. Your husband is systematically poisoning you with controlled substances, and he's been careful about it. The doses are high enough to incapacitate you, but not so high that you'd overdose immediately. He's playing a long game. But why? I whispered. Why would he want to kill me? That's what we need to find out. In my experience, there are 3 main motives for spousal murder: money, another woman, or both. She pulled out a contract and slid it across the desk. My retainer is $5,000. For that, I'll conduct a complete investigation into your husband's finances, activities, and associations. I'll put surveillance on him, run background checks on anyone he's connected to, and build you a case that will hold up in court. Are you in? I didn't hesitate. I'm in. Good. She stood and extended her hand. I shook it, feeling her firm, confident grip. First rule, you go home and act completely normal. Drink the coffee. But you're going to start palming the pills he gives you. Pretend to swallow, then spit them out when he's not looking. Can you do that? Yes. Second rule, you tell no one about this investigation. Not your friends, not your coworkers, not your family. The moment your husband suspects you're in immediate danger. Understood. Understood. Third rule, you document everything. Every time he gives you coffee, every time he gives you pills, every strange comment or behavior. You write it down with date and timestamps. You're building a case, Rachel. We're going to nail this bastard. For the first time in 18 months, I felt a spark of something other than exhaustion. I felt rage. Pure, clarifying rage. When do we start? Victoria smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who just spotted prey. We already have. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an actress playing the role of my life. Every morning, Thomas brought me coffee. Every morning, I took a sip, praised him, and then found a way to dispose of the rest, pouring it into plants, flushing it down the drain, even collecting samples for Victoria in case we needed more evidence. Pills were trickier. Thomas stood there and watched me take them with my coffee, so I had to perfect the art of palming. I'd put the pills in my mouth, take a drink of water, then use my tongue to push them into my cheek. The moment he looked away or left the room, I'd spit them into my hand and flush them. It was terrifying every single time, knowing that if he caught me, I might not survive the day. But the fog started to lift. My mind cleared. The exhaustion faded. And with clarity came the ability to see things I'd been too drugged to notice before. Like the way Thomas's phone would buzz constantly with texts he'd quickly silence. Like the expensive gifts that had appeared in our house over the past year. A new watch, designer ties, leather bags, that he'd claimed were gifts from grateful patients. Like the late nights at the hospital that happened more and more frequently, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. Victoria worked fast. Within a week, she'd placed a GPS tracker on Thomas's car and hacked into our joint bank account records. Picture that emerged was damning. We met at a coffee shop in Beaverton, far from anyone who might recognize us. Victoria opened her laptop and turned it toward me. "Your husband is having an affair," she said bluntly. Her name is Melissa Carter. She's the chief surgical nurse in the cardiac unit where your husband works. They've been seeing each other for approximately 2 years. 2 years. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been praising Thomas for bringing me coffee every morning, he'd been sleeping with his nurse for 2 years. "Look at this," Victoria continued, pulling up photos on her screen. Thomas and a blonde woman in her mid-30s, beautiful and polished, walking hand in hand into a boutique hotel in downtown Portland. Thomas and the same woman having dinner at an expensive restaurant in the Pearl District, leaning close across the table, her hand on his. Thomas kissing her in the parking garage of the hospital. "There's more," Victoria said grimly. "Your husband has been systematically draining your joint accounts. Small transfers, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, moving money into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. In total, he's moved about $800,000 out of your reach over the past 18 months. $800,000. The money my parents had left me. The money from the sale of their house and their life insurance. Money that was supposed to be mine." "But it gets worse," Victoria said, and I didn't think anything could be worse until she showed me the next document. "This is a life insurance policy on you. $2 million. Thomas took it out 2 years ago, right around the time his affair started. He's listed as the sole beneficiary." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. "He's going to kill me," I whispered. "He's been drugging me to make me seem mentally unstable, and then he's going to kill me and make it look like a suicide or an accidental overdose. He'll get the life insurance money, my inheritance, and he'll ride off into the sunset with Melissa." "That's exactly what he's planning," Victoria confirmed. "But here's the thing, Rachel. We have evidence. We have the lab results from your coffee. We have the inventory discrepancies at your pharmacy. We have photographic proof of his affair and documentation of his financial fraud. What we need to do now is figure out if there's more to this story." "What do you mean?" Victoria's expression was grave. "In my 25 years as a cop, I learned that people don't usually start with murder. They work their way up to it. I want to dig into your husband's past, into his patients, into his history. If he's capable of slowly poisoning his wife, I want to know if he's done anything like this before." A chill ran through me. "You think he's killed before?" "I think we need to find out." Victoria spent the next week diving deep into Thomas's background. She pulled hospital records, talked to former colleagues, researched his patient outcomes. What she found made my blood run cold. Over the past 5 years, Thomas had been the attending physician for 7 elderly patients who had died under his care. All of them were wealthy widows or widowers. All of them had died of natural causes related to their heart conditions. All of them had made substantial donations to cardiac research in their wills, donations that went to a non-profit foundation called the Morgan Heart Institute. "Let me guess," I said when Victoria showed me this information. "Thomas controls that foundation." "Bingo." "It's not technically illegal. The foundation does fund some legitimate research. But look at these financial records." She pulled up bank statements showing large transfers from the foundation to consulting companies that didn't seem to exist, shell corporations registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. "Your husband has been systematically embezzling from this foundation. Conservative estimate? He's stolen about $3 million over 5 years from donations meant for cardiac research." $3 million, I repeated numbly. "And the patients?" "I can't prove he killed them. Their deaths were all ruled natural." "But Rachel, 7 wealthy cardiac patients dying within a year of making large donations? That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." I felt sick. The man I'd married, the man I'd loved and trusted, wasn't just trying to kill me. He was a serial killer who preyed on vulnerable patients. "What do we do?" I asked. "If we go to the police now, will they even believe us?" He's a respected doctor. Those deaths were ruled natural causes. The foundation embezzlement would be hard to prove. And the case against him for poisoning me, it's strong, but it's not airtight. Victoria nodded. "You're right. We need more. We need him to incriminate himself." "Rachel, how good of an actress are you?" "What do you mean?" She smiled that predatory smile again. "I mean, it's time to set a trap." Plan was simple but terrifying. I would confront Thomas, not about the poisoning, not about Melissa, not about the money. I would tell him that I'd received a letter from my parents' estate attorney, informing me that there was an additional inheritance I hadn't known about. A trust fund worth $2.3 million that I would gain access to on my 35th birthday, which was coming up in 3 weeks. Victoria would be listening to everything through a wire I'd wear under my clothes. Thomas took the bait. If he revealed his plans or made any incriminating statements, we'd have him on tape. "This is dangerous," Victoria warned. "If he realizes what you're doing, if he suspects for even a second that you know what he's been up to, he might act immediately. You need to be perfect." "I can do this," I said. And I meant it. The fear I'd felt for months had crystallized into something harder, sharper. I was done being a victim. The night I confronted Thomas, I made his favorite dinner, braised short ribs with roasted vegetables. I opened a bottle of expensive wine. I laughed at his jokes. I played the role of the loving, slightly confused wife to perfection. After dinner, as we sat on the couch, I casually mentioned, "Oh, I got the strangest letter today from Harold Jennings. You remember him, right? My parents' estate attorney." Thomas's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand tighten slightly on his wineglass. "What did he want?" "Apparently, there's a trust fund my parents set up that I didn't know about. Some kind of delayed inheritance that I get access to when I turn 35. I laughed, as if this was all very amusing. "Can you believe it? $2.3 million. I had no idea. The silence that followed was heavy. Thomas set down his wineglass very carefully. $2.3 million, he repeated. "I know, it's crazy, right? Harold wants to meet next week to go over all the paperwork. He said I'll have full access to the funds on my birthday." I touched Thomas's arm, playing up my confusion. "I'm not even sure what we do with that much money. I mean, we're already comfortable. Maybe we could donate some to charity? Or take that trip to Europe we've always talked about." Thomas pulled me into a hug, and over his shoulder I could see our reflection in the dark window. His face had transformed into something cold and calculating while I was pressed against his chest, feeling his heart beat steadily, methodically. "That's wonderful news, darling," he murmured into my hair. "Really wonderful. You know what? Let's celebrate your birthday properly this year. I'll take the day off work. We can have a special breakfast together, just the two of us. A special breakfast, where he can make me special coffee." "That sounds perfect," I said, my voice muffled against his shirt. In my ear, barely audible, I heard Victoria's voice through the tiny earpiece she'd given me. "Got it! That's enough. Get out of there." But Thomas wasn't done. He pulled back and looked at me, cupping my face in his hands. In the soft lamplight, he looked like the man I'd fallen in love with, handsome, distinguished, concerned. "Rachel, honey, I've been worried about you. You know that, right? Your memory, your health, it's been getting worse. I think maybe we should increase your medication dosage. Just temporarily, to help stabilize you before this big financial decision. The last thing we want is for you to be confused or make a mistake with that much money at stake." My blood turned to ice. He was already planning it. Planning to drug me even more heavily in the days leading up to my birthday to make sure I'd be completely incapacitated when the time came. "Whatever you think is best," I said softly, submissively. "You're the doctor. I trust you completely." He smiled and kissed my forehead. "That's my girl. Everything's going to be fine. I promise." That was the moment I knew with absolute certainty that if I didn't stop him, I would be dead within 3 weeks. The next morning, Victoria and I met with FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb and Portland PD Detective Linda Orozco. We decided federal involvement was necessary because of the interstate financial crimes and the possibility that Thomas had killed patients in multiple states throughout his career. Agent Webb was a serious man in his 40s, graying at the temples with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He listened to the recording of my conversation with Thomas, studied Victoria's investigation reports, and reviewed the lab analysis of my coffee. "This is good," he said. "But it's not enough for murder charges. What we have here is definitive proof of drugging, strong evidence of financial fraud, and circumstantial evidence of attempted murder. The patient deaths? Without exhumations and full toxicology, we can't prove he killed them. So what do? I asked. Wait for him to actually kill me before you can arrest him? No, Detective Orozco interjected. She was a stern woman in her 50s, with cropped dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. We set up a sting. Rachel, you mentioned your husband wants to have a special birthday breakfast with you. We wire your entire house. We have agents in place. We catch him in the act of drugging you, and we get him on attempted murder. I'll be there, Victoria added. Along with a full tactical team. The moment he puts anything in your coffee, we move in. You'll be safe. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. 3 weeks. I had to continue this charade for 3 more weeks, taking my fake pills, disposing of my poison coffee, pretending everything was normal. There's one more thing, Agent Webb said. We're going to approach Melissa Carter. She's the weak link. If we can flip her, get her to testify against your husband, we'll have everything we need. How are you going to flip her? I asked. He smiled grimly. By showing her exactly what kind of man she's really involved with. 2 days later, FBI agents and Portland PD detectives arrested Melissa Carter as she was leaving the hospital. They brought her to a small interrogation room and laid out everything. The poisoned coffee, the embezzled funds, the suspicious patient deaths, Thomas's life insurance policy on me. Victoria, watching from the observation room, later told me Melissa's face went through a fascinating range of emotions. Shock first, then disbelief, then horror, and finally calculation. He told me his wife was mentally ill, Melissa said, her voice shaking. He said she was becoming dangerous, that she was stealing drugs from her pharmacy and had become addicted. He said he was going to have her committed for her own safety, and then we could finally be together. And you believed him? Detective Orozco asked. He's a doctor, Melissa said weakly. A respected cardiologist. I loved him. I trusted him. Ms. Carter, Agent Webb leaned forward. Your boyfriend is a serial killer who preys on elderly patients. He's been systematically poisoning his wife for over a year. He's embezzled millions of dollars. And when we arrest him, and we will arrest him, you'll go down as an accessory unless you cooperate with us right now. Melissa stared at the photographs spread across the table. Images of the 7 dead patients, the financial records, the photo of my coffee being analyzed in the lab. What do you want me to do? She whispered. We want you to wear a wire, Detective Orozco said. We want you to get him to talk about his plans for Rachel. Get him to incriminate himself. Do this, and we'll consider a plea deal. Don't, and you'll be charged as an accomplice to attempted murder and fraud. Melissa closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked 10 years older. I'll do it. The next day, Melissa called Thomas from the FBI field office with agents listening to every word. She used the script they'd given her perfectly. Thomas, we need to talk. Can you meet me tonight? It's important. They met at their usual hotel, the boutique place in downtown Portland. What Thomas didn't know was that the FBI had already secured the room, installing cameras and microphones in every corner. From the surveillance van parked a block away, I watched my husband meet his mistress on a screen. Victoria sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder as I prepared to hear things I'd never wanted to know. Melissa opened the door when Thomas knocked. He pulled her into his arms immediately, kissing her deeply. I felt nothing. The man on the screen was a stranger wearing my husband's face. What's wrong? Thomas asked, noticing her tension. You sounded upset on the phone. I am upset, Melissa said. Thomas, I'm tired of waiting. You've been saying for 2 years that you're going to leave Rachel. That we're going to be together. When is that actually going to happen? Thomas sighed, leading her to sit on the edge of the hotel bed. Soon, baby. Very soon. Fact, I have good news. Rachel's birthday is in 2.5 weeks. That's when everything's going to change. What do you mean? I mean, Thomas said, and his voice took on an edge I'd never heard before, cold and clinical. That's when she's going to have a tragic accident. A poor, mentally ill woman who's been struggling with drug addiction, who finally takes too many pills and doesn't wake up. Melissa's face went pale, but she pushed forward. Thomas, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that I've been very carefully building a case that Rachel is unstable. Her own pharmacy has inventory discrepancies in controlled substances. Her psychiatrist has documented her cognitive decline and memory issues. I've been saving every pill I've given her, building up a stockpile. On her birthday, when she's supposed to meet with the estate attorney about her trust fund, she's going to accidentally overdose on her own medications. Oh my God, Melissa whispered. Thomas, that's murder. It's mercy, Thomas corrected coolly. She's miserable, Melissa. Look at her. She can barely function. I'm putting her out of her misery, and yes, we benefit financially. The life insurance, her trust fund, the pharmacy, all of it becomes mine. Comes ours. We can finally be together without any obstacles. What about the police? Won't they investigate? Thomas laughed. Baby, I'm a doctor. I've been documenting her decline for over a year. I have a psychiatrist backing up my claims of mental illness. I have pharmacy records showing missing drugs. When she overdoses, it'll be an obvious suicide or accidental death from a woman who is spiraling into addiction. No one will question it. Have you? Melissa's voice cracked. Have you done this before? There was a long pause. Thomas studied her face, then smiled. It was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. Let's just say Rachel won't be the first patient I've helped transition peacefully out of their suffering. The elderly patients I treated? Some of them were in such pain, such misery. I gave them peace. And yes, they showed their gratitude through generous donations to cardiac research. It all worked out for everyone. In the surveillance van, Agent Webb turned to his team. That's it. We have him. Move in. What happened next happened fast. FBI agents burst into the hotel room. Thomas tried to run but was tackled immediately. Through the camera feed, I watched him being handcuffed, watched his face transform from shock to rage as he realized what had happened. This is entrapment, he shouted. You can't do this. I'm a doctor. I'm a respected member of this community. Dr. Thomas Morgan, Agent Webb said calmly, reading from a card. You are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, embezzlement, and suspicion of multiple counts of murder in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent. Melissa was crying, being led away by Detective Orozco, already beginning to give her formal statement. I sat in the van, watching it all unfold on the screen, and felt absolutely nothing. The man being arrested wasn't my husband. That man had never existed. He'd been a carefully constructed mask hiding a monster. Toria squeezed my shoulder. It's over, Rachel. He can't hurt you anymore. But it wasn't over. Not quite yet. The investigation into Thomas's past exploded into a media firestorm. When the FBI exhumed the bodies of the 7 elderly patients, forensic toxicology found traces of potassium chloride in 3 of them, a substance that mimics heart attacks and is nearly undetectable unless specifically tested for. Thomas Morgan wasn't just attempting to murder his wife. He was a serial killer who had been preying on vulnerable cardiac patients for at least 5 years, likely longer. The FBI traced his career back and found suspicious patient deaths at every hospital where he'd worked, going back nearly 15 years. The estimated death toll? 12 confirmed victims, potentially up to 20. He'd been doing this for most of his career, moving from hospital to hospital, always staying just long enough to kill a few wealthy patients, collect their donations, and move on before anyone noticed a pattern. The Morgan Heart Institute, his supposedly charitable foundation, was nothing but a money laundering operation. Millions of dollars in donations meant for cardiac research had been funneled into his offshore accounts. And Melissa Carter? She received a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. She was charged with conspiracy and received 5 years in prison with eligibility for parole after 3. During her testimony, she broke down and admitted that Thomas had told her I was mentally unstable and needed to be committed, but she claimed she never knew he was planning to kill me. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't care. The trial lasted 3 months. I testified on the 4th day, walking into that courtroom and looking directly at the man who had tried to murder me. Thomas sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, looking haggard and older. When our eyes met, he had the audacity to mouth the words, "I'm sorry." I turned away and told my story. I told the jury about the coffee ritual, about the fog and the exhaustion and the memory lapses. I told them about the lab results, about the missing pharmacy inventory, about the life insurance policy. I told them everything. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Thomas Morgan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the confirmed murders. The attempted murder of me added another 25 years. The fraud and embezzlement charges added 15 more. He would die in prison. As the verdict was read, I sat in the courtroom gallery between Victoria and my assistant manager Jennifer, who had become one of my closest friends through this nightmare. I waited to feel something, relief, joy, vindication. But all I felt was tired. It was over. The monster was caged. Now I could finally start to heal. 5 years have passed since that October morning when I tasted poison in my coffee. 5 years since my world shattered and reformed into something I never could have imagined. Morrison's community pharmacy is thriving. Through Thomas's arrest and the resolution of his estate, I inherited not just my original trust fund but also a portion of the recovered embezzled funds. The Morgan Heart Institute's assets were liquidated, and the money was distributed to the victims' families and to me as one of his intended victims. I used some of that money to completely renovate the pharmacy, expanding our services to include a community wellness center that offers free health screenings and medication counseling. Jennifer is now my co-owner and business partner. We've hired 3 more pharmacists and doubled our staff. The rest of the money went to establishing the Patricia Morgan Memorial Foundation, named after my mother, which provides support and resources to survivors of domestic violence and abuse. Victoria Hayes sits on the board of directors. So does Dr. Ramirez, the psychiatrist who unknowingly prescribed me medications that Thomas then stole and used against me. She's become a fierce advocate for victims and has helped develop protocols for identifying signs of medical abuse. As for me personally, I'm still healing. I probably always will be. Trauma of discovering that the person you trusted most in the world was slowly killing you doesn't just disappear. I see a therapist twice a week. I have nightmares. There are mornings when I still pause before drinking my coffee, even though I made it myself in my own kitchen. But I'm also strong in ways I never imagined I could be. I've learned to trust my instincts, to never doubt that small voice in my head that says something is wrong. I've learned that love should never make you feel confused or weak or diminished. 2 years ago, I met someone new. His name is Daniel Reeves, and he's a veterinarian who brings his golden retriever into the pharmacy to pick up heartworm medication. We started with coffee, ironic I know, and discovered we had a lot in common. He's kind and patient and understands that I need to take things slowly. Last month, he asked me to marry him. I said yes, but with conditions. Full financial transparency, complete honesty, and separate coffee makers. He laughed and agreed to all of it. We're taking our time planning the wedding. There's no rush. I've learned that real love doesn't need elaborate gestures or daily rituals that seem too good to be true. Real love is steady and patient and transparent. Yesterday morning, Daniel made me breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. With coffee I watched him brew from start to finish. As we sat at my kitchen table, the autumn sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Thomas Morgan tried to poison me. He tried to steal my life, my money, my future, my very identity. He succeeded in taking 8 years of my life that I'll never get back. But he didn't win. I'm still here. I'm still standing. I own a thriving business, I've helped create resources for other survivors, and I'm building a new life with a man who treats me with genuine respect and love. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry. If I hate Thomas for what he did. The truth is, I don't think about him much anymore. He's in prison where he belongs, and he'll die there. He's irrelevant. What I think about instead is this: I took one sip of poison coffee, and instead of dying, I woke up. I woke up to the truth, to my own strength, to the possibility of a different life. That morning 5 years ago, when I tasted those chemicals on my tongue, my old life ended. But my real life, the one I'm living now, the one I fought for, that life began. If you're reading this and something in your relationship feels wrong, if someone you love is making you feel confused or weak or like you're losing your mind, trust yourself. That small voice in your head isn't paranoia. It's your survival instinct. Listen to it. Investigate. Protect yourself. 'Cause sometimes the person holding the cup is the person who poisoned it. And sometimes the only person who can save you is yourself.